as we were singing this morning, this happens to me a little bit too often. I started to kind of my mind started to wander, and I started to look through some of these lyrics. Yes, I am. You got that? You believe in that this morning? You got that down? It's not who somebody else says that I am. It's who God says that I am. I'm broken but running towards you, God. It's your breath in our lungs, and we pour out our praise. Children's questions. Who do the ancient rabbis say ran into the Red Sea up to his neck before the water parted? Looking for a name there. Just quick, hint. It's not Noah. Which would be a totally different story, but it's also not Moses. Just saying. Second question. Abraham Lincoln said, "Do I not destroy my blank when I make him my blank?" So a couple fill-ins there. Then the last one, when you walk to the edge of all the light you have and take that step into the darkness of the unknown, you must believe that one of two things will happen. Either you will be on something solid for you to stand on, or God will teach you to blank. So, might be able to figure that one out, but we'll see what happens. So, if you've listened to me for a while, you might know that my favorite river crossing or sea crossing is not the Red Sea. I mean, it's pretty fantastic. But my favorite one is the crossing of the Jordan. And I think there's a couple of reasons for this. Number one, the crossing of the Red Sea is the Spielberg moment. Really, it's made for a movie. You've got Israel going towards the water, and they're pinned there. They can't get across because the Red Sea is there. You've got Egypt and the Pharaoh and his army are coming after them. So they're on this side. The water's on this side. There's panic everywhere. And Moses stands up and says, divide or something, and waves his staff at the water, and the water parts. And Israel goes running through on dry ground. And it's so dramatic. No wonder they made a bunch of movies about this. I mean, it's just designed for special effects guys. And then Israel gets to the other side of the river. Everybody's safely crossed. And all of a sudden the water comes back in, drowning any of the Pharaoh's soldiers who were eager trying to get across on dry ground. It's a great moment. But as I think about that one and then the one at the Jordan River was totally different. The Jordan River, they'd been camping there for a while already. And they had to know they were going to cross the water, and I'm sure, several of them had taken a little walk down to the edge of the Jordan and looked at the river at flood stage and wondered, how are we going to cross this thing? Very few of them. Very few. A handful had made it through the Red Sea crossing and is still ready to go through the Jordan. And all of a sudden God says, listen, I'm going to do the same thing I did at the Red Sea, except there's no army at your back. And I want the priests to go first. Specifically, I want the priests who are carrying the Ark of the Covenant to go first. And I'm going to time it. This is totally a miracle of timing. I'm going to time it so that when the priest's foot hits the water's going to stop. And it's going to pile up like way upstream at a place called Adam. And my priests are going to walk to the middle of that river. And Israel's going to cross on dry ground. There is a rabbinical tradition. This is totally a rabbinical tradition that says that At the Red Sea crossing, Nahshon, the leader of the tribe of Judah, you might want to know this, kids. Nahshon ran into the Red Sea until it was up to his neck before the water actually parted. He was so excited to get in there. He trusted enough, or he was terrified enough by the army that was coming behind him, that he ran into the ocean until the water was up to his neck before Moses finally parted the sea and he went through on dry ground. But that wasn't going to happen at the Jordan. At the Jordan, it was the soles of the priest's feet that were going to hit that water before God was going to part the water and allow Israel through on dry ground. Here's how Joshua says it. So when the people broke camp to cross the Jordan, the priests carried the Ark of the Covenant and went ahead of them. Now, the Jordan is at flood stage all during harvest. Yet as soon as the priests who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a great heap a great distance away at a town called Adam in the vicinity of Zarethan, while the water flowing down to the Sea of Arabah, that is the Dead Sea, was completely cut off. And so the people crossed over opposite Jericho. No army. No real panic. This wasn't the Red Sea crossing. That was for their parents. This was their crossing. And it was a river crossing of Jordan across from Jericho. And it waited until the priest took that first step before the water stopped. And then the whole community of Israel moved across that river while the priests holding the Ark of the Covenant stood in the center of the river. They didn't move. They didn't cross. They got their feet wet and went to the center of the river and then just stood there while Israel passed by them, probably on both sides, reaching the other side of the river in Canaan, about at the location of Jericho. Let me pick up in Joshua 4. When the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan and right where the priests are standing, and carry them over with you, and put them down at a place where you'll stay tonight." Go and pick up a stone. Seems like a strange thing to do, but okay. But the priests were still standing in the river. Everybody else had gotten across. The priests haven't been let go yet. They're still standing there. So I think there's a message here. I think there's three things that we need to remember about this story. And the first one is this: remember who you are. Have you ever wondered if God might not be that organized? I mean, as I'm reading through the story, this is, I'm weird, I know. This is what occurs to me. As I'm reading through this story, all of Israel comes across. The priests are still standing in the center. Everybody's safe on the other side of the Jordan River. And then God says, when the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Choose 12 guys to go back into the river and pick up 12 stones." And in my mind, I'm thinking, like, God, couldn't you have told Joshua this at the breakfast meeting that morning? Choose 12 men, one from each of the tribes, and get them to cross. And when they get to the priests, tell them to pick up a stone and carry it to the other side. No, but instead, God lets everybody cross over. And he says, "Oh, by the way, I need 12 guys to go back out in the river." and pick up some stones. And so 12 guys turned around and walked back out to where the priests were to find a stone and pick it up. And I'm thinking, in my mind, I'm going, what were these guys thinking about as they walked back into the river to where the priests were? They were facing all the places that they had come. All of the places they had spent were now in front of them because they're going backwards. And I wonder how they were tempted to define themselves as they walked back towards the center of the river. Who am I? Who am I that this is what I get to do? Where I get to go? How do we define ourselves? Were they maybe desert wanderers? They had been for the last 40 years. Were they runaway slaves? They had spent 400 years before that as slaves in Egypt. Who are we? How are we defined in this moment? There was a moment in World War II when Britain was getting pretty pummeled. Every night the bombers would come through. And the people were wondering, who are we? What's our future going to be like? It was at this moment that Winston Churchill gave his great speech. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. And we shall fight in the hills. We will never surrender. This is who we are. We're not defined by Germany. We're not defined by the bombs that are falling on us. This is who we are. We're going to be defined by our spirit and what we want to do. At the same time as Britain was being bombed, the king and queen, George and Elizabeth, were making trips out to the bombing sites. When finally Buckingham Palace was bombed, Queen Elizabeth, not the one that reigned and just died, but her mother, we know her more as the Queen Mother, but her name was Elizabeth too. But Queen Elizabeth said, "Oh, I was so thankful when the bombs fell on Buckingham Palace. I was feeling a bit bad that we hadn't suffered, but the rest of the city seemed to have." But the Queen was criticized because when they went out to see some of the damage that was done and to meet with the people, she always dressed up. And somebody came to her and said, "You're just rubbing it in the people's face. You dress up, but they can't." And her reaction was, she turned to the person and she said, when they come to see me, wear the best that they have, because they are trying to give honor to me. It may not be much in this moment as they're being bombed and they've lost their possessions, but they give of their best when they come to meet me. How can I do anything less when I go and meet them? I dress up because I want to honor them. They deserve my best. Who are you? Who do you get to let define you? Martin Luther King, in the early 60s, was registering the African American people to be voters. And he was working hard. And he was getting some pushback on it. And he was actually put in jail a few times, but one time he was put in jail and he got a letter from somebody and said, "Hey, I understand what you're doing, but maybe the time's not right yet. Maybe you just need to wait." And Martin Luther's response was, "We've waited for 340 years. How do we wait when people who are of color have to sleep in their cars because the motels won't take them? How many 5-year-old children do we have to wake up and say to mom, why don't white people like us? No. The time for waiting is over. We need to do something. The time for waiting is over for Israel. And these 12 guys go back to pick up a rock, and one of the questions they're having to answer is, who are we? How are we defined? Are we defined by Egypt, where we've lived for the last 400 years? Are we defined by the wilderness? Or are we defined by something else? And God wanted them to realize that they were defined by who He said they were, not who their enemies said they were. This is who you are. You are my child. You are part of my family, my community. Remember who you are. The second thing was remember God's grace. Whether we want to admit it or not, we are all here because of God's grace. At the end of the Civil War, there was a real push by the northern states, the American Civil War, to punish the southern states. Because they had cost lives, they had cost money, they had tried to separate, and some of them said, listen, if they get away without punishment, then there's going to be nobody who will not try to separate. Everybody will try to rise up and get their own way. And it was at this moment that Abraham Lincoln said, do I not destroy my enemy when I make him my friend? Do I not destroy my enemy when I make him my friend? That attitude actually saved the United States. I was watching Smirkanish yesterday, and his question of the week was, the United States' 250th birthday next year. And his question was, will the United States last for another 250 years? Well, they wouldn't have lasted this much if Abraham Lincoln hadn't stood up and said, no, do I not destroy my enemy when I make him my friend? It would have been a very different world that we were living in. After the Second World War, something similar happened. 2 peacemakers decided to go on a trip to West Germany and then to Poland. And when they reached Poland, they gathered with some survivors of the Second World War. And they said, we have a group of West Germans who would like to come. They'd like to travel to Poland and ask for your forgiveness. Will you meet with them? And there was a bit of a discussion, and then finally one old guy said, what you ask is impossible. Each stone in Warsaw is soaked with Polish blood. We cannot forgive. And the 2 peacemakers accepted that, thanked them for meeting with them, prepared to leave. And as they were leaving, they decided that they would pray a very familiar prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And the room went silent. Nobody went on. And finally, the guy who spoke up and said, no, we cannot forgive. Every Polish stone is soaked with Polish blood. With a quivering voice, looked at the peacemakers and said, we will meet with the West Germans. How could we not? If I'm unwilling to forgive them, how could I ever pray the Our Father? if I'm refusing to forgive them, I am no longer a Christian. 18 months later, the group from West Germany came, and they met with this Polish group, and they forged a friendship that lasted for the rest of their lives. We all need God's grace. All of us do. Sometimes the reason is a little bit more obvious than at others, but we all need it. As these 12 men go to the middle of that river and pick up those stones, they knew they were dependent on God's grace. The only way they could get to the center of the river was because God had given them the grace to hold the water back. Just for a while. Too often, we run into a dilemma in our lives. We try living this life and we find that we have two options. One is that we try to keep the rules. Become rule keepers. That's me, by the way. I'm a rule keeper. I keep even the most mundane rules. I've never wanted to be a rule breaker. But the problem is when we become a little bit too rigid in the rule keeping, become more like the Pharisees than about Jesus. All that matters is the rules. The flip side of this that some of us choose is to say, well, none of us can measure up, so we won't keep any of the rules. And I think there's a third option that is actually the one that God is trying to give us. It's that third option that says, I'm going to live within the tension of the rules and grace. I'm going to somehow come to a point where I realize that grace covers me. That tension is what's important. The last blank there is remember God. We need to live in the reality of God. Israel forgot the reality of God. I love the Patrick Overton quote. When you walk to the edge of all the light that you have and take that step into the darkness of the unknown, you must believe that one of two things will happen. Either there will be something solid for you to stand on, or God will teach you how to fly. It's only two realities. God's going to give you something to stand on, or He's going to teach you how to fly. Israel often seemed to forget their reality of God. They always seem to wander away from that one truth, that there is a God that can be remembered, that He is there. Several years ago, I became, I don't know what the word is for it, interested, maybe not quite strong enough a word. Infatuated, probably too strong. But I had this thing that stuck in my mind, and what it was the Habsburg funeral ritual. Most of us remember the Habsburgs for their solid jaw. Call it a Habsburg jaw. But what was more important for me was the funeral ritual. What would happen when a king died is that his coffin would be brought to the crypt where he was going to be laid to rest. And in this moment, you just believe everybody kind of coming with the body, the pallbearers, they all come. And just at the door of the crypt, the Grand Chamberlain would take a staff which had a silver end, and he would knock 3 times on the door to the crypt. And a voice would come from inside the crypt. And the voice would say, "Who is there?" And the Grand Chamberlain, standing outside of the crypt, would say, "I am," and speak the dead king's name. And then he'd say, "Emperor of Austria, Apostolic King of Hungary, King of Bohemia, Dalmatia, and Croatia, and this would go on. I didn't put them all there, just a few of them. This list of people, of how important this king was, would just be continue on and on and on. And when the list of titles for the man who had died had finally ended, a voice came from inside the crypt that said, "I don't know you." And there would be a pause. And then the Grand Chamberlain would take the staff and knock 3 times. And the voice from inside the crypt would say, "Who is there?" And the Grand Chamberlain would say, "I am," and again speak the name of the dead monarch. And then he would say, "His Majesty, the Emperor and King." And the voice from inside would answer, "I don't know you." Pause. And then the Grand Chamberlain would knock 3 times, one more time. And the voice inside would say, "Who is there?" And the Grand Chamberlain would say, "I am," and speak the king's name one more time. But this time he would say, "A poor mortal and a sinner." And the voice from inside would respond, "Come in." I've always wanted to do that at a funeral. Could you imagine somebody passes away and we're all outside? And the doors are locked. We can't come in. And then we have to knock and say, and somebody says, "Who's there?" And we say, I won't name anybody. I don't want to be. We name somebody. And we give all the lists of this person's accomplishments through life. Everything that they've done, all the things that were important to them. And then the voice says, "I don't know you." We do it again. Simplify our list. And the voice says, "I don't know you." Do it one more time. And this time we say, "I am a poor sinner in need of God." I have really, honestly, been wanting to do that at a funeral. I don't think I ever will. I don't think that the funeral directors would probably let me. But as I was finishing up this message this morning and realizing that we are going to be moving into communion, I thought maybe I could make use of the ritual for us right here. So I've modified it. What I want us to do, and obviously, if you don't want to do it, you're okay. But we don't have anything to knock on, so I was wondering if we could just clap 3 times. There you are. And then I'll say, "Who's there?" And then all of you just kind of come up with, I am Garry. I'm a pastor, a youth worker, a guitar player, a singer, a husband, father, a grandfather. Just list out all the ways that the world might define you. And then I'll say, "I don't know you." And then pause, and then you guys can clap 3 times again. And I'll say, "Who is there?" And you'll say, "I am," and your name. And maybe just say who your parents are. So I would say, "I am Garry, the son of Dwayne and Shirley." And then I will say, "I don't know you." Then you'll clap 3 times. And you'll say, I am Garry, a sinner dependent on you, God, and your grace. And my response will be, "Come, welcome to the table." Think we can do that? Maybe? Enough of you with me to make this work? Let's try it. Knock 3 times. Clap 3 times. Thank you. Who's there? Come on, I can't hear you. I don't know you. Try it again. Who is there? I don't know you. Okay, one more time. Who is there? Come. Welcome to the table. I'm going to pray. The servers are going to come up here, and they will pass out as you come to take the elements. And then in just a minute, we will just hold the elements, and we will take them together in just a minute. So if the servers would come and get themselves ready, let me just pray. Father, this is who we are. We are in people in need of your grace. There is nothing about us that screams righteousness, or that we could say that would make us deserve to come and partake of this ritual that you shared first with your disciples around that table. But God, you have given us your grace. You have loved us in spite of all the things that are wrong with us. You've accepted us into your kingdom. And God, it is in that strength that we come and partake of these elements. This is not about us. It is not about who we define ourselves as. It's not about who the world defines us as. It is all about how you define us. Father, in this moment, may you forgive us of all of our sins. May we walk fully in the grace that you give to us. May we be your children, depending on you for all that we do. We pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen. Your grace is enough. Your grace is enough. Your grace is enough for me. Yeah, your grace is enough. It's falling down on us. Your grace is enough for me. For your grace is enough. Your grace is enough. Your grace is enough for me. Yeah, your grace is enough. Heaven reaching down on us. Your grace is enough for me. For your grace is enough. Your grace is enough. Your grace is enough for me. Gotta see your grace is enough. I'm covered by your love. Your grace is enough for me.